Well, so nice to see you all. I think it's raining a little bit, so thanks for making your way through the dark and the rain. Welcome to the Myrna and Stephen Wise Tulin Fall Education Session on vaping, e-cigarettes, and JUUL. We're so delighted to have our esteemed panel here with us, and I do want to they are going to introduce themselves, but I do want to just introduce them by name quickly. Rhonda Williams, Jessica Summer, Tatiana Byam, Zoe Paxton, Diane, Kirson-Glitman, and Dr. Mark Levine. So nice to have you all with us. Thank you. Our format for tonight is we'll have about an hour of presentation followed by questions and answers. We'll come around with microphones during the Q&A period, so if you'd be kind enough to use the microphone, even if you think you have a loud voice, that would be super helpful. It'll be great for the video. We will end promptly at 7:30. And I want to thank our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Hickok and Boardman Insurance Group, VCAM, who kindly does the videotaping for us. We have Wendy, and Ken is up in the back. Thank you very much for being here. We also have VT Digger and Main Street Landing, and then of course our wonderful host sponsor, Dealer.com. Everyone always so much enjoys coming to this beautiful building. A few other housekeeping notes. The bathrooms are right around the corner. We'll have an usher right outside in case you need to make your way there, or if you have to leave early, they will help you exit the building. We have to be very conscientious about not wandering through the building. That's part of our agreement with Dealer.com. In your folders, they're chock full of information. All of the slide decks from our panelists are included, so please peruse those, take notes. We also have some other materials, thanks to the health department, about this important topic. We have some Howard Center materials, and we do ask that you complete the feedback form at the end. You can either leave it in the box or out at the front desk. It really helps us with our planning for the spring and next year, so that would be lovely. And then lastly, attendees often ask us how to make a contribution to Howard Center after these events. We've included an envelope if you're so inclined, or you may go to our website, howardcenter.org, to make a contribution. So again, thank you very much for coming out. I do want to give a special shout out to Rhonda Williams right here. She's been really very helpful in helping to coordinate and bring people to the panel. So thank you very much, Rhonda. And come on up.
Thank you so much, Diane. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Rhonda Williams. I oversee the Tobacco Control and Prevention Program at the Health Department. I want to thank the Howard Center in particular for hosting this event on such an important topic. And I also want to thank all of you for being here. I really look forward to the discussion at the close of the panel. Many people have been asking over the past year, just what is JUUL? Is it really a problem? When the regulatory body itself, the FDA, uses the word epidemic, I think we have the answer. Tonight we're going to hear from several perspectives to help us understand what electronic vapor products are, how they are used, and why they can be dangerous, and what we, in each of our respective positions, roles, or as community members can do about it. A youth director from the Burlington Partnership for a Healthy Community joins us along with two youth from Edmonds Middle School who will share what these products look like and how they are used at school and how they're marketed to youth, and marketed as closely as on Church Street. What use and concerns are from a school nurse perspective with Diane from Essex High School, and electronic vapor systems as a public health crisis with Dr. Mark Levine. Let's first spend a moment on definitions. The umbrella term we use in public health is electronic nicotine delivery systems, or vapor delivery systems. These vapor products, commonly called e-cigarettes, but not by youth, have a lot of variety in their design, but most of them contain nicotine, and most are cheaper than cigarettes. E-cigarettes were developed 15 years ago by a Chinese pharmacist who lost his father to lung cancer. There have been 3 generations of e-cigarettes. So the first wave, are the cig lookalikes. And you may have recognized these. They often are slim, look very much like a cigarette, and have a little light on the end that are red, becomes red when vaped. The second wave introduced mods or tanks. These are very customizable and can have very large batteries and quite a lot of nicotine. And the third generation, mainly JUUL and JUUL copycats, are why we are here tonight. It's because they are very popular, they're easy to conceal, and they contain always a high level of nicotine. In 2016, the Surgeon General was very definitive. E-cigarettes should not be in the hands of youth or young adults, nor should e-cigarettes be used by those who are pregnant. Recent guidelines are also stating that those who do not use tobacco products to not start using e-cigarettes because of the risk of addiction to nicotine and future use of cigarettes. Many people are concerned, well, aren't people quitting using e-cigarettes, so shouldn't we be careful with the regulation? The FDA, to help answer this question, commissioned a report, and they reviewed over 800 studies. And one of the conclusions from this consensus report is that there is limited evidence that e-vapor systems are effective aids to cessation. So that's an important piece. Vermont has been one of the first on the front to protect our vulnerable. These include youth, young adults, those living in communities, from starting to smoke or vaping and to quit if they do. These successes include protecting workers in all types of work sites from secondhand exposure, including e-cigarettes, not allowing promotions at sporting events. We have a legislature that's been pretty supportive in the past of tobacco taxes, which are shown to be effective in preventing youth from starting or using cigarettes, and banning e-cigarette sales to minors. We are one of the first states to do that. We also have had a long-running, unfortunately, youth prevention program, Our Voices Exposed and Vermont Kids Against Tobacco. Youth engagement, youth empowerment, their voice is very powerful in helping people to understand the impact of tobacco on their lives. We were also one of the first states to ban sales to minors before the FDA did, and to require safety packaging on e-liquids. In 2016, we passed legislation to restrict use wherever tobacco products are restricted. And this has been very important, but it's not the end-all. However, it does help message that e-cigarettes, like other tobacco products, cause harm, and that they need to have a protective norm around that. That's what we call a strong social norm. Now, all of this has helped us to be at a less than 10% smoking rate, so that's good news. However, as in the media you see, is that our e-vapor use is above that. It's at 12%. So the other piece is that we don't necessarily have all the data we would like. Our most recent survey, called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, didn't specifically ask about JUUL use. The national survey, including in Vermont, will. It's critical for us to be proactive and aggressive. Teens who start using e-cigarettes who are not smokers are 4 times more likely to go on to smoke. And this was just in a tweet from Scott Gottlieb at the FDA. They also issued a statement yesterday with this message. Now we have hard data to support that a public health tragedy is underway. The New Truth Initiative research shows that 15 to 17-year-olds have over 16 times greater odds of being JUUL e-cigarette users than those who are 25 to 34. JUUL is not being used by those who are older. They're being used by teens. So the FDA is looking at policies that include restricting sales online, restricting flavors that are appealing to kids, but they haven't done those yet. So Vermont is also looking at options and that can be made at the state level, which Dr. Levine will be able to address. At the health department, we are working on a number of fronts, and these are multi-pronged. And so some of these I just want to pull out and mention quickly is that we have Quitline Resources that are available for free. Materials can be shipped directly to your home, including patch, gum, and lozenge. People double their chances of quitting effectively if they're using these tools. We also are available for anyone 13 and above. So Quitline can help youth. And our Quitline takes the approach that you haven't stopped, you haven't been successful with your quit until you've also quit e-cigarettes. We offer free signages for businesses that include e-vapor language, substance-free language, and we're working on a e-vapor product toolkit in addition to an education campaign to really address that misperception that nicotine isn't dangerous for kids or that e-cigarettes don't contain nicotine. They usually do. So you can always email us at tobaccovt@vermont.gov if you have any questions or have any requests. I'm happy to help. And now let's get to our panel. So Jess, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
So hi, I'm Jessica Summer. I am the Youth Project and Fundraising Coordinator at the Burlington Partnership for a Healthy Community. And part of my role at BPHC is to be the youth group advisor. So I currently advise our Be Above group, which is an after-school substance abuse prevention club at both Edmonds Middle School and Hunt Middle School. And I'm also currently the advisor for our high school group, which meets Wednesday mornings before school starts. And that group is called Above the Influence. And I have two members of our middle school group here from Edmonds today to do a presentation for you about JUULing. Take it away, ladies.
Good evening. We are both members of the Burlington Middle School Substance Abuse Prevention Group, Be Above. I'm Zoe. I'm an 8th grader at Edmonds Middle School.
And I'm Tatiana. I'm also an 8th grader at Edmonds Middle School.
Be Above members at Edmonds and Hunt Middle School team up to support and inspire each other to live substance-free lives and to bring about positive change in their schools and broader community. Through participation in the group, we gain the knowledge and develop the skills to participate in a wide range of activities, including community education and outreach, public speaking, data analysis, and media advocacy. Today, we are here to inform you about a particular brand of e-cigarette/vaping device called JUUL. E-cigarette usage is becoming increasingly popular among youth, and JUUL e-cigarettes are rapidly becoming one of the most popular e-cigarette brands. This is especially true among youth who can easily hide JUUL devices. They look like flash drives, jump drives, and can easily fit in the palm of your hand. JUUL devices put young people and adults' health at risk, and that is why we think it is important to be sharing this information about JUULs with you today.
Specifically, we're going to learn about the parts of a JUUL and how they work. Then we'll learn about what's actually in the JUUL clouds and how it isn't just water vapor. We'll talk about the risks involved with using JUULs, and we'll explore the way that JUUL companies target and manipulate young people in their marketing.
Anatomy of a JUUL. JUULing, or JUUL, is a verb to describe someone who is using a JUUL device. Someone might say, I am going to JUUL on my way home. The JUUL is made up of two components. The part on the left is the power source and contains the battery that can be charged through a USB port. That's right, you can plug it right into a computer or your phone charger. The smaller piece on the right is the JUUL pod. The cartridge, even though it is quite small, provides 200 puffs, or about as many as are in a pack of cigarettes, and contains a variety of different flavored e-juices. The JUUL pod holds its e-juice in the outer shell. When plugged into the battery piece, the e-juice can be heated to produce an aerosol. The aerosol produced is sent through the chimney and out of the mouthpiece. The device with the rechargeable battery is priced at $34.99, while a JUUL pod pack with 4 pods costs $15.99. In theory, a 4-pack of JUUL pods is cheaper than a pack of cigarettes. This is scary because the cost won't discourage youth from using a JUUL. I wanted to remind everyone that, as I said earlier, JUULs are just one brand of e-cigarette/vaping device. There are many different kinds and brands of electronic nicotine delivery systems. Some other popular brands are featured here. We've decided to focus our attention on JUULs because they are popular with teens and young adults in this area and have been designed and marketed to be more discreet than many other types. This slide shows skins that you can buy to accessorize your JUUL. The fact that this product comes in sweet flavors, is high-tech, has fun accessories, and is easy to hide makes it more popular with kids my age and in high school.
So now we'll talk about the aerosol contents and the health risks. There is an important distinction to make when discussing the safety of ingredients used in e-cigarette e-juices. That's the difference between ingesting and inhaling. It's important to understand that inhaling doesn't involve a breakdown of chemicals like with ingestion. As shown, ingestion involves consuming a solid and having the digestive tract break down these chemicals. Unlike ingestion, anything inhaled into the lungs is not broken down. Imagine all the chemicals from a vape aerosol clogging up the lungs with no breakdown occurring. The lungs were not built like the stomach. There are chemicals that have been approved by the government for ingestion, but not for inhaling. Yet e-cigarette and vape companies like the creators of JUUL state that certain chemicals are safe for inhaling, but there is no evidence to support that claim. The results of an ever-expanding body of research suggest e-cigarette companies' claims about the safety of their products are completely unfounded. In March of this year, a study was published that found toxic chemicals in the bodies of young people who use e-cigarettes. Tobacco companies are continuing a decades-long tradition of lying about the health risks of their products.
In addition to containing toxic chemicals, JUULs contain a very high concentration of nicotine. JUUL is considered to be part of the next generation of e-cigarettes and is a major concern among youth because it delivers the same amount of nicotine that is found in a pack of cigarettes to the body and the brain. All JUUL pods contain the same amount of nicotine found in a pack of cigarettes. When you think of a JUUL pod, think of a pack of cigarettes. The JUUL pod has exactly 59 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. This very high amount can quickly hook youth on nicotine. Most e-juices found on the market are likely to range from 0 to 36 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. Unlike other e-juices, which may or may not contain nicotine, all JUUL pods contain nicotine.
A recent study revealed that youth who use e-cigarettes and vape pens with higher nicotine concentrations are likely to experience an increase in vaping and smoking. From this presentation, we know that the JUUL is higher in nicotine than many other e-cigarette and vape devices, so this device can easily lead to an increase in vaping and smoking. A common way of representing the amount of nicotine in e-juice is with a percentage. A higher percentage means there is more nicotine, but 5% on a JUUL box is misleading since it just says 5% strength. This marketing strategy of using 5% strength on the JUUL box is manipulative and misleading to youth. As we mentioned earlier in this presentation, the 59 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine in JUUL pods is extremely high in nicotine. This amount of nicotine would be strong for the most experienced cigarette smoker. So now we'll talk about the marketing tactics of the JUUL company. The creators of JUUL claim their target audience is adult cigarette smokers. This ad is clearly not targeting adults. It looks like this is trying to connect with teens. Some ways that this ad might appeal to youth is the bright colors that the ad uses, the woman's body position, the ponytail, and the Letterman's jacket. A 2018 research study found that by 2016, nearly 4 of 5 middle school and high school students, or more than 20 million youth, saw at least one e-cigarette advertisement. Zoe and I took a walk to the stores near our school to investigate whether our friends were being exposed to promotion of these products. Maple, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and peppermint are some of my favorite ice cream flavors. Did you know that you can also smoke them in vapes? It's bad enough that vape companies are trying to hook kids by using their favorite flavors. But it's even worse when colorful vape ads are placed right at our eye level and positioned beside ads for ice cream. This ad was in a store window a block away from our school. Every day, kids from Edmonds go to stores like this one to buy candy and other snacks. When we are there, we see tobacco right behind the checkout like this one. It grabs your attention and makes it seem like a lot more people are buying tobacco products than really are. Tobacco advertising can entice youth to use tobacco, and spending to advertise e-cigarettes has increased rapidly since 2011. During the time e-cigarette ads have increased, there have also been increases in e-cigarette use among U.S. youth. From 2011 to 2014, e-cigarette use in the past 30 days increased from less than 1% to almost 4% among middle school students, and from less than 2% to 13% among high school students.
Between 2011 and 2017, e-cigarette use significantly increased among youth in high school and middle school. The 2017 National Youth Tobacco Survey found that 11.7% of high school students and 3.3% of middle school students used e-cigarettes in the past 30 days. So we wanted to leave you with a few last summary thoughts. Research has found that many JUUL users don't know the product always contains nicotine. And because many teens call the product JUULing, they do not always realize that it is an e-cigarette or tobacco product. The CDC calls skyrocketing sales of JUUL a danger to youth and says its popularity among young people threatens our progress in reducing youth e-cigarette use. Youth e-cigarette users cite flavors as a main reason they began using e-cigarettes. A study that included middle and high school students found that 43% of young people who ever used e-cigarettes tried them because of appealing flavors. This past May, the FDA and Federal Trade Commission took joint action against several e-liquid companies that marketed their products to look like candy or other kid-friendly food items, such as Ready Whip, Nilla wafers, and Sour Patch Kids. Then, just this month, the FDA reported an epidemic of youth e-cigarette use and asked 5 major e-cigarette manufacturers, including JUUL, to submit plans to address youth e-cigarette use within 60 days or they would pull their products from the shelves. For decades, smoking rates have decreased, and now e-cigarettes like JUUL are putting this generation of youth at risk of nicotine addiction. The time to act is now. Thank you all so much for your attention. If you are as worried about some of the things we shared today as we are, there are ways you can support our youth prevention work in Burlington. We are happy to talk after tonight's presentation with anyone who is interested in getting involved. Thank you again, and remember to live above.
So yesterday morning, the high school students that are part of our Above the Influence group decided to interview some of their peers about what they're seeing around BHS in regards to JUULing and other e-cigarette usage. So this is the video that they put together yesterday morning during our meeting.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah. I see them. I see them talking about it. Sometimes they ask me for a pod, but I don't JUUL, so I can't.
Sometimes in the bathroom next to the chorus room or the hallway.
Especially in the bathroom and stuff, you can just kind of like smell it, I guess. And like you'll see them doing it, and like they'll do it even in like the cafeteria, but they'll like try to like hide it because it is pretty small. And yeah.
I usually see them like walking out of the bathroom in the cafeteria. Sometimes in the back of the classes, in the auditorium, like when we're leaving school, in the hallways, everywhere.
Like pretty often.
I mean, probably often, like what Ayan said, like probably between classes and stuff.
Couple times a day and daily. Like it's every day at different times. Like they'll do it at lunchtime, and then I'll see them during advisory doing it, and then I'll see them like during fourth block doing it, and on the walk to like the bus station to go home, I'll see them doing it on the bus. Like they're addicted.
Quite often, a lot of people use it.
Probably like at the stores, because like they sell at the stores, and like probably online also.
I know that the gas station near my house has it, and like I've seen like a lot of students that I know go there and buy it, and older people always buy it. Like 18-year-olds are allowed to buy it, so I see them buying it for younger kids and selling it to them online.
A lot of people in the school like sell them. They're like, oh, I have a JUUL for like $20 or something. And then a lot of people talk about how like they get it from online and stuff, and there's like a lot of advertising through like social media and stuff like that. So
Liquid nicotine. Well, nicotine, yeah.
I know for one there's nicotine, because a lot of people that don't use JUULing talk about how like it's like it can give you cancer and stuff, and so that kind of like a lot of people just like get unmotivated.
Unless you're in health class, then no, and like not very many kids are in health class. Like there's like 4 classes, so I don't think so.
Not really. Yeah, I mean, not educated, but like I like know how it's bad, and it's like, how do you know? It's like, well, I heard like it's worse than cigarettes, so like that's really bad, and like I don't know why people are doing it, because like they can get like lung cancer.
So hi, I'm Diane Kirson-Glitman. I'm a school nurse at Essex High School, and pretty much, yeah, everything they said, totally agree, and most of that is what I'll be talking about as well. But I guess the thing is I'm passionate about this as a school nurse right now. I'm speaking here as a pediatric nurse and for the last 16 years as a school nurse, and first and foremost, the vaping and JUUL issue just made me angry. Angry because we had made so much progress in getting kids to decrease tobacco youth, and it just feels like we're sliding back, like way back. So over the years that I've been a school nurse, and we're going to get it, we've gotten some statistics and you're going to get more, but just the whole subjective piece of it is that the number of kids who come into my office who smell of cigarettes or who admit to smoking cigarettes is just like plummeted. We don't have anyone who's doing it anymore. Those who are usually come from families where they smoke at home, or the families are economically stressed, the least able to afford that sort of thing. The segment of young people picking up the addiction to smoking, not just trying the occasional cigarette at a party or something, is really plummeted, and all of that was just great news. When I first heard about vaping by students on campus 2 years ago, we really didn't know. I mean, the school and the administration was kind of taken by surprise. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what was in the JUULs.
or not in the JUULs, because we didn't have JUULs at that time. We didn't know what was in the vapes. We didn't know what the kids were actually doing. It was confused a lot with cannabis use. So what would happen is that if a student was caught vaping, they would be brought into my health office for a full health assessment to see if they posed any immediate danger to themselves, if they needed to go via ambulance, because nobody knew what was in these particular devices. Generally, they didn't have any kind of problem with them, and so we kind of were just at a loss. We didn't know what to do. Of the students who are known to vape or JUUL, there were several that were known to do that, and what would happen is they would come into my office for other unrelated symptoms. They would come in saying that they felt like their heart rate was really high, or they felt nauseous, or they felt dizzy. And I wonder now, knowing that many of them had been caught doing the vaping, whether that was a symptom of overuse from the vape liquid or nicotine. We don't really know. With cigarettes, the public health initiatives, as we've already outlined, have used education, taxation, and legislation and regulation, and successfully to combat the problem. Cigarette smoking was once associated with strength, glamour, macho, cool, and sexiness, and it's now considered exactly the opposite. Universally, students in our schools look at smoking in a completely negative manner and don't want to be around anyone who smokes. Often a student who I may see who is a smoker or smells of cigarettes apologizes for the behavior and seems really embarrassed. It's as though something no one wants to be associated with. But e-cigarettes on the vape companies such as JUUL and now Sorin, we found that one also, are currently not regulated and have been able to portray their devices as cool, hip, sexy, and cute and clean. As you saw, it looks like an Old Navy advertisement. You might as well be watching that. But they have gotten a little bit better about it in terms of JUUL. If you go on their site now, it looks a little more mature, it looks a little less colorful, but it's not enough. So we've done a great job in terms of, changing that perception, but it seems like we need to do a lot more. In our middle and high schools, JUUL and products like it that may not produce a significant vapor or smoke are being used in classrooms, in locker rooms, bathrooms, and hallways. The products are being used by athletes. They're finding it in the locker rooms of athletes, with the team, high flyers, and generally across all of our demographic and achievement lines, and that's very different from what our cigarette use was. That really worries parents. Parents who thought they might have been safe from keeping their kids from smoking cigarettes are now feeling unsafe. Parents who have, are at a loss when they're called up by the assistant principal and said that your child's been caught JUULing. They don't know what to do. We've got no resources for them. We're in a phase of time where we're looking at whether or not it's a tobacco violation, whether it's a substance abuse violation, so people are kind of trying to figure that piece of it out, but also what to tell the parents. They don't know what to do to help their kid. As we just discussed, most students are getting JUUL and other devices through students and siblings who are 18 or over. Sometimes they're stealing their parents' JUUL, not JUUL devices as much, but vaping devices. So sometimes that's going on as well. Internet accessibility is something we never had to deal with regular cigarettes. Now that you can buy this product over the internet, that's just something completely different. So what I wanted to do right now is simply show you a video that kind of encapsulates everything that we've been trying to say about how it looks from the school perspective, and for teens. Hopefully we won't have an ad.
Me with this interview, I was very hesitant at first at how it would
Let's see, it's not okay. It's here, but it's not there. So let's see. Well,
Can't do it in that mode. We got to be in presentation.
I'm going to just go back in and let's see. Bear with us just a minute. We had it up earlier, so let's see if we can get it. Let's see, okay.
Yeah, just do that one, right there.
Yep. Thanks.
And play. We don't have the volume now. There we go.
Yeah, when Jack approached me with this interview, I was very hesitant at first at how it would affect my college admissions and just how people perceive me through the internet and whatever. But then he gave me a couple days to think about why to do it, and in those next 2 days I just looked around and I see that all of my friends, all of my best friends are addicted to nicotine.
What am I doing? Where's this go? My name is Fletcher Faden, and I'm 16 years old. I'm 16 years old. I think I started JUUL probably end of sophomore year, so that'd be about last year or last summer. And yeah, all of the people in my grade started using it.
My name is Jack Solomon. I'm 15 years old, and I am a JUUL user. We got them from an older kid, and he was teaching me how to use it and stuff, and I got the hang of it. I was able to inhale the smoke without coughing and get a nice head rush, and I was like, this thing is priceless, it's amazing. And I was like, I gotta show all my friends what this thing is.
There have been times in the past where I've been JUULing during class, and I've JUULed pretty much every moment where I wasn't in class.
I think that kids leaving school desperately needing pods happens a lot, and it shouldn't happen, but kids are very addicted to these e-cigarettes and need this stuff to be satisfied.
People will go during class, people go to the bathroom, people go between classes, people go in the car while they're driving home, pretty much any moment where they can be away from the eyes of parents, they'll just be JUULing and all day. Certain people will go through a full pod a day, which is about the same nicotine content as a pack of cigarettes.
Hi, my name is Margarita, and I'm 14 years old, and I use the JUUL. Sometimes during class, I'll leave, if I get really stressed, it's kind of my go-to, I kind of need it. It's just a part of my life now that, I know it's bad, but I can't stop. I'm Sylvia, and I'm 14, and I've been using a JUUL for 9 months. When I'm doing my homework every night, I'll be writing, and then all of a sudden I'll want a JUUL rip, and I'll have my pencil in my right hand and my JUUL in my left. Some of my friends have tried using cigarettes, and it's because they have been JUUling, because they're so used to JUUling that they just think it's okay to use cigarettes. If you banned most of the flavors, like fruit flavors or just like food flavors, I think that not as many kids would try it because it's not as like appealing.
If there were no flavors, kids would not be as attracted to these JUULs. Banning e-liquids would force a lot of kids to make the right choice. I for sure think that.
There's a message to all people who think that personal freedoms trump public health. You're gonna let kids get really sick if this continues. I guarantee the amount of nicotine that's going to these kids' system will result in some bad shit. I just can't see how it won't. And something's gotta happen soon. Something's gotta happen soon.
So many questions, I know. And I couldn't have said it better myself. This was done in Westchester County, New York, and the student who produced the video went on to go to the legislature and get at least that county's age to purchase any kind of nicotine up to 21. So I think that it's really, it was a powerful message that was happening in a locality, and students took the initiative, young people, to try to affect change. Right now, I'm going to just leave it at that because we have other things to talk about, and then we can answer questions later.
While we're getting this up, I'm Mark Levine. I'm Health Commissioner for the state of Vermont. I'd like to thank the Howard for inviting me to speak once again. Last time I spoke, it was a far more controversial topic on safe injection facilities. Is there anyone in the room that thinks this is a controversial topic? By now, you should be sold. Aren't these middle school students phenomenal? I'm now in the position as sort of cleanup hitter here, but I actually am just going to endorse most of what they said, provide my little flavor to it, and hopefully some of the passion as well. But they've done such a great job. So very briefly, I'm going to just frame this crisis in my own terms, explore why I'm concerned, what can the clinical community do, and what can policy change do. So you never see an increase in hundreds of percent. So a 680% increase in teen use of what we just saw in the last 6 years. That's like incredible. That truly serves the purpose of being an epidemic. As Rhonda said at the outset, we've really had great success with what's now called combustible cigarettes, getting the youth rate down to 9%. It had been more than double that. Electronic vaping systems now actually have outpaced them in the use rates. And then from the National Youth Tobacco Survey, a 75% increase in the last year nationwide. So what are the concerns about the JUUL device? First of all, if you're a teenager, it is cool. My personal device has really wonderful graphics on it. Makes me feel like, joy, this is a special thing. I can plug it into my computer. If my computer's in my backpack, while I'm sitting in school, I can actually lean over looking for something in my backpack and take a quick hit off of it. And if I'm really adept, I don't show that I'm smoking anything. If you really want to impress your friends in a different venue, you can blow all kinds of smoke rings and designs and be really cool in that way. But from a technologic standpoint, it's quite cool. You then have these flavor pods that get plugged in. This is creme brulee. But the flavors are quite appealing. Now, we had actually gotten rid of flavors when it came to the other kinds of cigarettes because that was providing yet another route for youth to get addicted to nicotine and run the risks that regular cigarettes have. Same thing is happening here now. And one of the common themes is that the rule book that Big Tobacco put together and succeeded in this country with so much, although now, of course, with litigation, they're paying some of the price, that tobacco rule book is still in action. And every part of that rule book is being played by with the electronic vaping systems. And then the last part is the nicotine delivery system being especially potent, meaning that once you've used it once, essentially, you're addicted because it has such an incredible nicotine load. So just to briefly go over why I'm concerned, there's the prevalence data showing about a quarter of high school students using some tobacco product in the last year, not all cigarettes, thank goodness. And they're actually, from a youth risk behavior survey, past 30-day use, which we use as kind of a surrogate for current use, decreased in 2017 by 6% to 19%. Fortunately, the attempt to quit rate is pretty respectable, actually. The addictive nature we've talked about and we'll talk about again. But two pieces of data changed in our youth risk behavior survey from 2015 to 2017 that had been very stable or actually showing improvement over the years previously for like a decade. And that was the ever use rate going from 30% to 34%, which was really quite alarming. And there was a similar increase actually in alcohol, though not quite to those levels. And a decrease, as I mentioned before, in current use. A very bad combination in public health is lots of reasons to use something and be attracted to them, but feeling that they can't possibly harm you. And the perception of harm data is kind of concerning. Now, these are the same youth who are asked, is smoking cigarettes bad for you? And fortunately, they know this. Everyone in our society knows that they're bad. You might think 68% isn't a good number, but that's still a pretty high number. So they perceive that picking up smoking as a habit is not going to be in their best interest for their health. But then if you look at some of the data that I have on the slide regarding their perception about e-cigarettes of all sorts, and this is now national data, not just Vermont data, it's only 39% in 2016. So a marked difference in the perception that this could be harmful. And by the way, if we put the data for alcohol, it wouldn't be quite as high as the 68%, but it's still on the higher level, over 50%. So youth can discern things that are not good for them. But this kind of epidemic, they haven't figured that out completely yet. The flavor pods are incredible. I think if our youth at the table have actually had the opportunity to not smoke them, but just smell them, they would agree that the authenticity is unbelievable. And if you have a favorite flavor, whether it's mango, whether it's bubble gum that you chew, you will find that these so well recapitulate those pleasant sensations you had that this is a great thing for you to do. They're very appealing. And again, we have that dark history from cigarettes where they tried to do the same thing, but it's legal to do it with these currently. 80% of youth report using a flavored e-cig product the first time. So the flavor is what's catching them. It's not any other aspect of it. And then in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey for last year, 1 in 5 Vermont high school students have ever tried a flavored tobacco product. So even if they're not necessarily staying with them, the opportunity to try them is taken up by many of them, and often is a reason to continue. So as a physician, I can give you a better perspective on nicotine addiction than you've heard yet from the table. Everyone, including the video, said this is bad. But why is it bad? Educators have known for a long time that the developing brain not only is sensitive to addicting substances and more sensitive than the adult brain, but brain development is impacted by substances like nicotine. So learning potential, attentiveness, cognitive function, there's actually strong evidence that nicotine is not a good thing to do. And as I said, if you're a youth or a young adult, which goes up to age 25, by the way, your brain is more susceptible. You're going to be more easily addicted. And in fact, the data about regular smoking from adults tells us this, because 95% of adult smokers will tell you they started before they were 21, at a time when their brain would be more readily addictable to the substance. Not to scare people that if any of you have youth who are JUULing, they're going to become heroin addicts, but we have really good data from interviewing people who have some very serious addictions that by and large, most of them began early in life, early teens with nicotine, moved to alcohol and cannabis, may have done some other things in between, but eventually got to prescription opioids and then heroin. It's a continuum that we see time after time after time. So I use the term entry drug. And then, of course, we do have youth, whether they're in high school or graduated from high school, who become pregnant. And we know that there's very adverse effects on the fetus and on the pregnant mother from nicotine and other aspects of smoking. Hard data, around 40% of the youth who actually took this up as a habit were completely unaware that it had nicotine in it. It was a flavor thing. It was a cool thing to do, and it was only afterwards they learned that they were now addicted to that because of the nicotine. Countless times, clinicians will tell you that people have come to them in their late teens or college years and said, I wish I had never done this if I had only known there was nicotine, because I can't get off of these things now. And you saw the impact of the flavor pod equaling a pack of cigarettes. Flavor pod containing about 200 hits. Doesn't mean one person is doing that, because youth actually can buy them as a consortium, if you will. So that the expense is lower for each one and share those 200. But still. And we don't know so much about the other harms. So some of the harms may include what's in the vapor, what's in the aerosol, what's in the flavor. There are things called aldehydes in the flavors, which actually are not good for the human body in the form that they get inhaled in. There are contaminants. There are metal fragments reported in these. And so what are they doing to overall lung health? This is an epidemic that's really in this decade. So we don't have as much information about this because the studying is just beginning at a higher level. You've heard that people can return to using combustible cigarettes. One thing that these e-vapor products, not just JUUL, but others, were invented for was to help people get off of cigarettes. The jury is not quite done with that one. There's lots of literature that say, yes, they do indeed help adult smokers get off of cigarettes, but there's also data that contradicts that. So I wouldn't say that we have a uniform opinion on that. And of course, once you return to combustible cigarettes, you run the risk of the known carcinogens that has in them. We're in a state now that has legalized marijuana. It's known from other places that you can actually, in those flavor pods, put THC-containing substances as well. So a fear of mine, which has been founded in other settings, is that you can co-addict youth, not only to nicotine, but to the main active ingredient in cannabis, which is THC. And who knows what other substances. And at the price point, as you've already heard, is quite attractive. And there's not much in the regulatory framework. The FDA, in the last couple months, has really been very public about what they're concerned about and what they're asking of the companies. But really what's on the slide is what the state of the state is right now. There's concerns about age verification because people can buy these on things like eBay and doesn't really matter what your age is. Lots of youth will tell you how they got it, and you would have thought there were controls in place, but apparently not. So online, as we all know, is a scary world sometimes anyways. There hasn't been a lot of requirement regarding flavors or product testing. There have not been bans of flavors like they are in regular cigarettes. And then I mentioned the tobacco playbook, and the marketing strategies up until today have not been limited, but the FDA is taking a very, very close look at that. I will add that the FDA has had time over the years to continue to take looks at that with no result, but maybe we've reached the tipping point. And this is just to show you the gains we've made, both in adult on the top curve and youth on the lower curve, and rates of smoking. We've made tremendous gains. What I chose to cut off of this slide, because it gets very busy, is we have listing of various legislative initiatives, like where you can't smoke anymore, and what tobacco tax increases have been over time. And there's a very nice correlation between these gains and those policy changes. So finally, in closing, so what can the clinical community do? Obviously, you have to ask people as a screening tool what they're doing. The usual question is, are you smoking? Do you use alcohol? Do you use illicit drugs? Now the question has to be, do you JUUL? Because actually, you could answer no to all of the above, and unless you ask specifically about electronic vaping products or JUULing specifically, the person wouldn't actually say yes. And they might not even think they're hiding it from you. They're just, it's not a harmful thing. Why would you want to know? And that's usually at adolescent well visits. Adolescent well visits have to occur for the question to be asked, so that's another point. Then, of course, counseling, and in public health, we always talk about counseling and education, but education and counseling are necessary but never sufficient. Needs to be more than that. The Quitline is phenomenal, and once one's identified through screening that there's a problem, the Quitline should be accessed as a resource. There's a problem if you're under 18 and you actually want to give somebody another nicotine delivery system that will help them get off of the one they're on. So something like a patch or Nicorette gum or things of that sort. You actually have to have a prescription to give the person to make that happen. They can't just walk into a drugstore under 18 and get one of those products. And then, as Rhonda said at the outset, there's lots of education on our website. We've got a health advisory we point out about this. And then, trying to empower those of you who've come to listen to us tonight, what can you do to help leverage policy change? So, in the tobacco world of regular cigarettes, 6 states and a large number of cities in this country have actually raised the age of purchase for tobacco products to 21. Vermont is not one of those yet, and within our region, Massachusetts was the 6th state. But it's a pretty rare thing for states to do. But obviously, tobacco 21 doesn't have to just be cigarettes. It can be all kinds of nicotine delivery systems. And it's interesting in the short blurb that the FDA director, Dr. Gottlieb, put out yesterday or the day before, the companies themselves offered that as a potential remedy to the situation we have now. offered support to that kind of logic. Second thing is that we've taxed the heck out of cigarettes, but we don't actually have any taxes on these products. It's not a level playing field. So having taxes and fees isn't really such a powerful concept when you think about it that way, because we're doing it for cigarettes, and these are as harmful as cigarettes. So why don't we do it for that? And have policies about flavors, whether the FDA does it or it has to be done on a more local basis. The age verification thing, I don't want to say anything disparaging about our retailers, our merchants in our state, because actually we think they're doing a pretty good job. And we have a tax and liquor control board and all that, tobacco and liquor control board, and we're not hearing huge numbers of violations. But nonetheless, it's really important to make sure that the online setting gets controlled in a much better way than it is now. The marketing strategies I've talked about, which really the companies can't deny that they have been appealing to this audience. Mention the FDA is appropriate, and then as parents and concerned community members, clearly you could vote next week, but beyond that, it's more important that no matter who you voted for, you engage your elected officials if this is something you're as passionate about as the rest of the world. And then finally, partners with the education community who are here at the table and quite motivated and passionate themselves and want to partner with you because you want to have multiple voices coming together in synergy to really get this kind of message across. This is an epidemic that is just getting the press it needs very, very, very recently, and it needs to have way more publicity because these are our youth, and protecting them is really certainly job one in my job description, but it's for all of the parents and community members, I'm sure it's job one in yours too. So I guess we're now at the point of Denise telling us how to behave while you ask questions.
Thank you all so much. That was really informative. So,
hi, great stuff. I was kind of curious, how did the cat get out of the bag here, right? I guess right, a company comes to whoever, the FDA, whoever says, hey, we want to put this out on the market. I'm just curious, like, no way. Flavors, all that other kind of stuff. We just kind of did all this work to kind of keep you at bay, and now, you know, we just opened the door and let it out there.
I think in terms of what Dr. Levine mentioned about good intentions for helping people to quit, we've been stagnant in our adult rate, and it's not just in Vermont, in many places nationally. And so researchers are really looking at, can e-cigarettes be the novel device that can help people turn the curve? At the same time, though, I think an underappreciation about as products evolved and as nicotine became much more available with a lot less regulation and the use of flavors, and over 7,000 flavors, is that a huge problem has been created.
Thank you. I have a bit of a statement as well as a question, but I've been active in this in the past, and I'm glad you mentioned raising the age to buy to 21, because the Vermont House has passed that at least once in the past 2 years. Last year, the Vermont Senate almost passed it. It was defeated by 16 to 13, and two of the candidates who voted against it are from Chittenden County, Tim Ash and Chris Pearson. Both of them voted against raising the age to 21. I'm getting on them to do it, to rather flip their votes, and I highly expect that the issue will come up again. And I also think it's refreshing, Doctor, that you seem so passionate about it, because in the previous governor's administration, we got a lot of smoke blown at us, and It's pretty much the opposite from what it was in the Peter Shumlin administration. So thank you.
Hi, similar question. I'm just trying to figure out how the FDA let these companies introduce a product in flavors and not been able to figure out what that was going to do. I thought they super tested everything and, you know, had to go through a long process to get these things on the market and to have no regulations to go along. They are a nicotine product, so even if, when they thought, oh, this is good because it'll help people get off cigarettes, why didn't they, you know, have some regulations? And I also wanted to know if there's any legislation in the pipeline that anyone is talking about in Vermont to make some regulations of our own.
I don't feel qualified to answer for the FDA, but I do think things snuck up on them very quickly. So even with the good intentions and all of that, I do think that things just really, the ball kept rolling down the hill faster and faster and faster. But I share your concern and skepticism and incredulity about it.
And if I could add too, is that there have been 3 comment periods on flavors the FDA has held, and the Department of Health has commented on 2 of those. And most recent comment period was this year, and we submitted nearly 1,000 concern cards from Vermonters collected by youth and our grantees to say enough about flavors. They need to be regulated. The science is there. They were restricted for cigarettes, but not for e-cigarettes, and it's time. So very fair point, and just that we see that and monitor it and do what we can on our end as well.
If I
Regard
can,
to your
I
second
just
question, you know, as you know, the legislature doesn't come into session till January. There's plenty of talk, yeah. But I would not give you any specifics on that because there is nothing specific to like review and say, that looks good.
Hi, I just want to add something in. My name's Steve Higgins, and I work at UVM, Department of Psychiatry, and we actually have grants from the FDA to do research on this topic. So I can't speak for the FDA, just like Mark said, to make that clear. But my experience, I've been working with them now for a little over 5 years, is they really are trying to do the best they can. So when the e-cigarettes first came on the market, they didn't have the legal, FDA did not have the legal authority to do anything about them. So, because they were nicotine, they were not tobacco. So then they had to pass, get the authority. And of course, this is, you know, the federal government and laws. And so they passed something that's known as the deeming rule that has given them authority now over e-cigarettes. So now they have that, but as has been mentioned, and everyone is in agreement about protecting youth. But what the FDA is trying to do is now what I call nuanced policy, and that is there's still a possibility the e-cigs may be helpful to adult smokers. And so like when Mark mentioned the fact that the taxes are high on cigarettes, which we now refer to as combusted products, and not on and lower on e-cigarettes. We're aware of that, but one of the concepts that we're looking at is it possible for the 15% of smokers who are persisting despite all that we know, is it possible that we could transition them from the combusted cigarettes to the non-combusted if they persist in wanting to use nicotine. And the same thing with the flavors. We're hesitating to prematurely take the flavors among the adults. because again, it may be something that attracts them away from the cigarettes, which are now not flavored, and everybody's in agreement they shouldn't be. So from my perspective, I really give Scott Gottlieb and the others working with him at FDA a lot of credit, because the simple answer at this point would to just go with what's been recommended. Let's just get rid of these, but it could, I think many of you know, but right now we have more than 480,000 people dying every year prematurely from cigarette smoking. So they have that responsibility, and they're trying to look in a nuanced way. They work. It was so refreshing as a researcher to meet with them, because they really care, and they really look at your research data carefully. And so that's my experience. If you think of questions, other questions asked, I'd be happy to share anything I know. But so far, I'm pretty impressed with their efforts. And they may discover, given what has happened lately, that they just have to protect the youth, they just have to be stronger, against e-cigs. But right now, they're trying to do their best to protect the youth and still leave the opening to protect the adults.
I was wondering if e-cigarettes or JUULs have been seen in like product placement things for movies or TV. I'm kind of wondering why that hasn't happened, and maybe if that's part of their strategy to keep it on the lowdown. And as a family physician, I'm really, as part of my day job is to help people who want to quit smoking and to meet people where they're at. And I really think we have a lot of tools for that. And it's important to do things like motivational interviewing and really like listen and spend time with people. But this seems like a whole nother bird. And really my first reaction is to just launch an airstrike on this factory. So what do you think we should do as parents? And just, that's probably not the right attitude, but I would love your feedback on kind of the manipulation campaign that's been going on and why it's not, or maybe it has been in movies. And just the kind of the nitty-gritty on how to talk to kids about it.
How would you want your parents to talk to you?
Do you have something to say?
So we do a lot of work with the youth around advertising and what that looks like. And what we're finding is that a lot of these things are being advertised in ways that as adults or parents you won't see. So there's a lot of social media advertising. So these things are popping up in youth feeds. And the challenge with social media advertising is that it's really, really easy and cheap to specifically target only certain groups of people. So they can put their dollars in advertising only to teenagers who are interested in, say, skateboarding and being outside, just as an example. And as a parent, you're never going to see that because you're not the age group that they're targeting. So just because we're not seeing it as adults in movies or TV shows doesn't mean that they're not still getting that same exposure as youth.
One of the other things is, you're right, we're not seeing it in movies or ads or anything like that, but if you go online and you start looking up JUUL and you do it through YouTube and you start looking at the videos, you can see how they're marketing to each other about the cool factor of doing it. You can also see other videos that talk about what has happened in terms of the positive aspects of it. And when you go to the JUUL website, you can also see sort of historically how they've changed their ads and how they're marketing now. So it's very interesting as you go through the search to sort of see what is being used, and then you can kind of ferret out how that manipulation is happening.
And just to piggyback onto the advertising comment, that's the trick we use in public health. So a lot of people say, you've got this opioid epidemic, you've got marijuana legalized. Why aren't we seeing anything about this to protect our kids? Why aren't they getting the messaging? And it turns out they're getting the messaging, but it's on the social media that they use. And their parents are not on that social media. So their parents are looking in the movie theater, their parents are looking on television, and that's not where the youth are actually going for their information or engaging their time. It's on the social media that they're quite used to. So we do our counter-marketing, if you will, against all these evils through those kinds of means.
I think just another thing I wanted to add is that I think that the youth, teenagers, adolescents are underinformed about the addiction side of it. And so what's happening is you start off, and I think that that's what the video kind of shows, is that it's this cool thing. You know, it was really a great achievement when this older guy showed me how to do it, and I could do it. I learned this new trick. And they don't realize that they're becoming addicted to something. They'll be dependent on it psychologically and physically. And I think that's one of the things we can use in our education to kind of turn the message around. None of our youth that in general, youth don't want to be seen as being addicted. They want to be seen as cool, just being able to maybe be seen using something, but they don't want to be addicts. So we really have to hammer home that this is what could end up happening. And I think we may get some traction there, but that's going to be changing the way we message in our health education classes, changing the messaging at home. And one of the things that I was concerned about when I surveyed my assistant principals about what they say to parents when they tell them, you know, your kid's been caught JUULing and they're going to get a suspension, et cetera. I said, do you ever refer them to their family physician? And they're like, what are you talking about? So, I mean, that link that this is a potential addiction problem. This really is a medical problem. Medical people should be informed. And then, of course, you may feel like you don't have all the tools for them yet, but, you know, we just need to take it to that level of seriousness.
And I think those high school comments that were played before really get to the level of addiction. There's a reason the students are continuing to go to the bathroom and in their car and whatever. They're acting like traditional cigarette smokers who need that nicotine fix because otherwise they get feelings that aren't so good and that take over. So they need to actually do that.
If they're doing it by themselves, they need it.
Yeah.
If you're doing it in a group, it's a social thing, you get that. But if kids are going off by themselves into bathrooms, that's something to really worry about.
I have laryngitis, excuse me. What would you recommend, Dr. Levine and Steve, maybe you have ideas, if an adult who's addicted to tobacco walks into a doctor's office and asks the doctor, what do you think about vaping? Do you have a narrative that you would recommend for someone in that position?
Yeah. I mean, my narrative is most things that you're going to do are better than cigarettes in terms of your risk of lots of the badness, in terms of lung cancer especially. However, the jury, as I said, the jury is not in 100% with my review of the literature, which I think is supported by the Institute of Medicine's final sort of conclusion, which is they're not sure that this is what it was touted to be in terms of a device to help you get off of cigarettes in a permanent way. I also know that we have other nicotine replacement products that you can walk into the drugstore now and buy that have a track record and have an evidence base behind them that should be reassuring to you and could help you get off of regular cigarettes.
Question up here.
I just wondered, given the how prevalent the use is in schools and how much people are seeing it, what's happening there. And we know that the FDA doesn't protect us. There's a lot of things that we use that we have no idea what's inside the bottle. And so I wonder if there is more information about the other things that we know are harmful besides nicotine and these things that we can talk about.
I'm sorry, did you mean like the other things that are being vaped?
Well, or even within the JUUL, you know, the synthetic products, you know, like what are they?
You might want to be able to answer the...
Like how do they affect, you know?
Yeah, and I did on my one slide try to show my feeble attempt at answering that.
The jury is out and we don't
Yeah.
You can extrapolate a little bit about what the health effects will be and talk about them more openly.
Yeah.
Even though there might not be studies, is that true?
I think the students had one study.
Yeah, there's one study.
But there's not a lot. That's the problem. There will be.
There's one study out already that links one chemical that's known to be in a JUUL to causing popcorn lung.
Right.
So while it's not the same risk of lung cancer as smoking a cigarette, like nobody wants popcorn lung either.
Exactly.
I just want to offer a comment on the question about what do you do when a smoker comes into the physician's office. So I agree, again, this is for adults, that all the information is not in, but as was just being mentioned about extrapolating from the things that we do know from many years of researching cigarettes and their constituents and how they produce harm, that an e-cig, while not harmless, is less harmful than combusted cigarettes. And so I think as a medical community, we're being a little slow to offer e-cigarettes as an option to people who have tried the conventional nicotine replacement products and have failed. I think we're allowing some of them to pass over this option that while not perfect, might be effective. And I think we also have to consider the possibility that there's a subgroup of chronically addicted cigarette smokers who are never going to be off of nicotine completely. Just like we had to come to grips with that about opiate dependence, and e-cigs or some later device may be the safer option rather than having them continue on combusted cigarettes.
While the mic is being passed around, we also have to keep in mind we have other options like bupropion and Chantix, for which we have very good evidence as well, that don't involve smoking anything.
And I would just like to add to that is we work closely with Medicaid because, as someone mentioned, those who are lower income, lower resourced are more likely to continue smoking and have less success. So now no copay, including for Chantix, and a free benefit in terms of for gum, lozenge, and other NRT aids that is not time limited. So it's a very good benefit.
So we have two last questions, Delana, and then here, the house clock is 5 minutes fast, so just indulge us.
I just had a quick comment. I think that's what makes this very complicated, and there was a comment made around whether or not this is controversial. And I think that, interestingly, when we're looking at the epidemic that happened with adults and the health concerns that we have with adults, and this came into the market as a way to potentially be helpful around recommendations for adults who were addicted to nicotine and cigarettes and all of the health problems they were having. And now we're looking at the other end of this with our youth and how do we protect our youth? Because what's happening is this is another way of introducing nicotine to our youth and having that then potentially escalate where they're no longer needing to JUUL because they may be using combustible cigarettes at some point in time. And so I think there's these two ends of this that makes it very complicated for looking at how do we approach this and making sure that the right information is getting out there to protect everyone.
Delana, can you pass that?
I wanted to follow up on Helen's question. I just recently talked to my children's school principal, vice principal at high school, to tell them that the bathroom stunk and, what are you doing about this? And I got really no great response. And so I wanted to follow up on Helen's question about the high schools and the middle schools. And I'm wondering what the Department of Public Health is doing to build a relationship with those principals that you're talking about, even at Essex, who are saying, what do you mean tell them to talk to their pediatrician? So what kind of messaging, what kind of relationships are being built to inform the folks on the ground about this as a health epidemic? It's not just like kids being naughty in the bathroom, but that they really are very serious. Because I don't sense that it's being taken that seriously at our school, frankly.
Wow, well, I know it's being taken really seriously at our school. And the question is, how many fronts can we attack on it at the same time? So again, going back to the fundamentals of education, which requires changes in not only our health education, but maybe adding in more full class meetings, having, special presentations, doing all that kind of education in the school. But we know that some of the key indicators for students is what happens at home. So having parents aware so that they're talking about it too. We all know how to talk about other difficult subjects, whether it's alcohol use or sex or just wearing your seatbelt. Now we need to talk about this as well. So there needs to be some information out there, and I believe that there are some resources that are starting to come out online. When you look up the adult side of looking up for JUUL versus the student side or the child side of looking up for JUUL, there are some messaging and some public health resources that are coming out. So I think we're going to be looking for that as well. And discipline is another issue. It's just like, what do you do when you find that it's happened, and how do you solve that problem once it has happened? But maybe you can answer what else they're doing for public health for reaching out.
We work closely with Agency of Education, and they are very close to issuing a memo to all principals. Also, as I had on a slide, is unfortunately these things do take time to get approved, and especially when we do it in a collaboration, but that's important. But the education piece, to provide consistency across schools for what does it mean for parents, what does it mean for the students, what does it mean for all those, for coaches, and to have a toolkit ready so that that can be disseminated. And then that third piece really is around policy and having consistency in the policy so that what happens when a student is using, that it's not the burden put on the student. They're not using it frequently because necessarily they want to, but because they have to. And so how can we be helping and making that policy explicit and consistent across the state is something else that we are in discussion with.
Thank you. The slide we didn't actually show you was the picture of some of the drawers in principals' offices.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That are absolutely full to the brim with confiscated devices.
Send that back to the JUUL speakers in California.
Yeah. And we did have several members of this panel actually were at a sort of a summit we held at the health department that had educator input. And Rhonda and I are getting invited numbers of places because people have heard about what we're talking about and saying, you need to come to our community and to our supervisory school or whatever to give this message. So, like I said, this is one thing that it happened very quickly. And it's taken off, and now the response is going to have to happen as quickly.
But for a state like Vermont, we can do nicotine 21. We can do this. We just need to have everybody on board. Vape shops, all of it, nicotine 21.
Let's have a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming. We'll be back here in the spring. If you'd kindly fill out your feedback forms and drop them at the front desk, that would be great. Safe travels.